It's Christmas morning, everybody, because the ban list and rules changes have been announced for Riftbound. They have a bunch of patch notes for rules, they have tournament rules changes, and then, of course, the ban list was the big one that everyone has been looking for. So we're going to go through and read all of the updated rules, watch the video on the bans, and give some reactions to it. So let's see what they have in store for us. I will say some of this has been spoiled. And if you want to just know what the bans are, the timestamp will be down below, so you can just go straight there. And I'm sure if you're watching this, though, you probably have an idea of what the bans are. So let's start with the patch notes. Welcome to the patch notes for Riftbound Unleashed Edition. Included in today's update are system clarifications and expansions, fixes to many logical or procedural errors, and the new rules required to play with the mechanics included in the Unleashed expansion. This rules update has 3 key goals. Number 1, to support the new expansions, cards, and mechanics with rules that will explain how they function. Number 2, to provide some clarity on rules changes and why we make them. And 3, to shore up some of our rules foundations that were unclear or in need of updating. I feel like already this is kind of a just perpetual Riftbound problems. It's a complicated game, and there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of gray area with the way some of these rules work. So I imagine this is not going to be the last time we have a patch note, patch to the game's core rules. The first goal for this update is to ensure that all the new cards in Unleashed work when they're released in China on April 8th. That has involved adding new rules systems, new keywords, and individual rules, as well as modifying some extent rules to support new cards and systems introduced in Unleashed. Thankfully, the work done in Spiritforge rules update allowed us to streamline some of these rules by reusing the systems introduced then. Our second goal with the update is to explain some of the decisions being made on what rules are changed and why. The team is looking at some changes to card templating in future sets that will make cards significantly easier to understand at a glance. That's good. They made a lot of text changes after set 1. I think that's kind of what they're referencing here. And we want the introduction of those changes to be a relatively smooth transition for players. In order to facilitate that, we're starting to introduce some of the necessary rules machinery in this update. Another reason for rules changes you'll see in this update is to manage interactions introduced with cards printed in Spiritforge that the rules were not equipped to handle. Many changes in this update were meant to clarify how those interactions function and to preemptively clarify interactions with Unleashed cards. I'm sure they'll give examples of what they're talking about. Maybe it's just the referencing the errata list that came out right after Spiritforge released. We can't catch every rules edge case, but the good news is that as we apply these improvements to the rules, these types of fixes will become fewer and fewer as sets go on. We're still in Riftbound's infancy, and many of the pains felt around rules and templating are a normal part of games growing and changing. Ours has simply been accelerated due to attention and the immediate growth of our competitive scene. And although the changes you'll see might seem big at first, the goals when the team changes our rules are the following: to make the rules more intuitive for players, and to set up future changes that will improve the game overall. We have no plans to change the rules in order to manage the power level of cards, only to make the rules more intuitive and to align them with our design goals. Some cards will receive functional changes with these rules updates, but that isn't the goal or the reason for the change. With each update, our hope is that fewer and fewer systems will be updated or changed in a functional way. Now let's look at the changes in this update. Okay, so this is primarily... Okay, it's first just going to be new interactions and additions to the rules that are coming in Unleashed because of the new functions. So let's start with Unleashed Edition XP Hunt and Level. XP is the marquee mechanic for Unleashed. Players can now gain experience, and unit abilities can reference that experience. XP is a resource that spells and abilities will add and spend. XP comes with a few related keywords that you will see on cards Hunt and Level. Hunt is the ability that gives its controller 1 XP when a unit with Hunt conquers or holds. Higher Hunt value means more XP gained. Some cards allow players to spend XP just like players spend energy, power, and buffs. To spend XP, reduce your XP by that much. Level is a dependent keyword, more on that in a second, that becomes active when its controller has a certain amount of XP. Level 6 means it has its dependent ability, and its dependent ability will be active when its controller has 6 HP. Some Unleashed booster packs will have a card in the token slot that is designated to help players keep track of their XP. Interesting. Oh, so we'll have like a little XP token. That's fun. Oh, I think this might be a little... There we go. Symbols. Since the Legion keyword was introduced in Origins, activated abilities with Legion have been a point of confusion. Does the Legion text only include the parts after the keyword appears? Can you activate the ability even if you haven't played a card this turn? Honestly, this has been a bit of a templating nightmare. I felt that. Even the way that it's written, where it doesn't indicate that it can be like anything after the first card. It's written in a way that suggests that it's the second card, even though that's not what the ruling is. Obviously, you can use Legion any card after the first. But it is a little confusing. In order to better clarify how this works, and to support level and future keywords with a similar effect, we're adding a bit of templating magic to make things easier to understand. This is going to take the form of a small arrow pointing from the word backer of dependent and permissive keywords like reaction, action, death knell, level, and Legion, which themselves will now come before the ability at the very start of the line. The arrowed backer indicates that the ability that these keywords are associated with. That ability has those permissive keywords and the dependent ability of those keywords. Outside of card text, this will be expressed with a greater than sign, or a little caret, whatever. What is the term for that? Little arrow. Let me just read this again. Before the ability. Okay, so it's just making it clear that anything that the keyword is associated with will be followed by this. That way you know exactly what is a reaction, or what is Legion, or what is level, etc. Unleashed Edition dependent keywords updated Legion. As mentioned before, dependent keywords are being clarified and supported in this update. We already had one dependent keyword that was printed on cards in Origin, the aforementioned Legion, and with the addition of level, it only made sense to give those keywords a bit more structure in our rules. Additionally, the Spirit Forge rules update gave us the machinery needed to make these abilities significantly easier to understand with the concept of inactive text. A dependent keyword is made up of two parts: the keyword itself, which is short for a condition, and the dependent ability that is active while the condition is fulfilled. So as long as the condition is not fulfilled, the ability is inactive, meaning the ability's effect will not apply and it cannot be triggered or activated. This probably sounds familiar because that's how Legion works. Legion's being updated using the new dependent rules. New system clarified, Legion is a dependent keyword. Okay, so I think that I wish I knew the exact card that they're talking about where this is unclear. I probably should know, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But basically what it's saying is if it says Legion in it, and it has an ability that you could otherwise try to use without activating Legion, you would not be able to do so, right? If something says Legion on it, all of the text associated with Legion can only be used when Legion is actually activated. Unleashed Edition, ambush, conditional action, and reaction. The bot gank lives on in the ambush keyword appearing on some units in Unleashed. Units with ambush have two passive abilities. The first reads, I may be played to a battlefield where you control units, where the second reads, I have reaction as long as I'm being played to a battlefield where you control units. Fortunately, in Riftbound, you have the ability to control when your jungle shows up to a team fight. Nice. Like the flavor. Who wrote this, by the way? Doesn't say. Where were we? In order to support the conditional reaction keyword in this ability, a new rule has been added clarifying how and when cards with conditional permissive abilities can be played to the chain, and what happens if they lose those abilities while on chain. Oh, interesting. Ambush as a keyword is added. Conditional permissive abilities might only be fulfilled while the card or ability with them is on the chain. In such case, it can still be played or activated at the appropriate timing as long as doing so could fulfill the conditions. New rule, if the chain item does not fulfill the conditions by the time Step 5 check legality has been reached, the actions taken while playing or activating the chain item are undone and is returned to the zone it was played from if it was a card. Okay. So I'm trying to think of a good example. The one that comes to mind immediately is you push into a battlefield and your card gets rebuked. You can still play ambush in reaction to rebuke because at the time that it's played on chain, the ambush, because it's a reaction, is being played before rebuke is resolved. But for instance, if there was a reaction speed card played afterwards, so for instance, if you were playing, I don't know, someone rebuked a card, you tried to ambush, and then they revealed a hidden card that killed your unit at that battlefield, you would no longer be able to play the ambush card to the battlefield. I think that is what that's saying. That's how it reads to me. Rules update, winning the game. Previously, there were 2 conflicting rules for winning the game. A player would win if they had points equal to the victory score in cleanup, or they would win immediately if they accrued points equal to the victory score without needing to wait for a cleanup. We went back and forth on how to fix this and ended up on the changes below. This should relegate unintentional drawn games to a marginal occurrence and make it clear precisely when the players win. Clarified, a player will win the game if during a cleanup they have accrued points greater than or equal to the victory score and greater than any opponent. Both must be true. If a player gains 2 or more points as a result of burnout processed in a sequence and fulfills the above conditions, they win the game immediately without needing to wait for a cleanup. Okay, so I think there's a ruling with the Purple Draven that this clarifies that I cannot think of off the top of my head, but I'm sure someone smarter than me would be able to. The one that does come to mind is the Ivern being added to the game can change battlefields. So if you're playing on the battlefield that changes the ruling to 9, then you could actually be at 8 points, change Ivern's, use Ivern to change the battlefield to a bush, which would negate it. Putting it back to 8 points should win the game. And unless you accrued points greater than or equal to the victory score and have greater points to the opponent, the game will end. Both must be true. So that means we're actually probably going to see a reasonable amount of draws in that game. Rules update, combat and showdown. The vast majority of players intuit that a showdown should be able to transition to a combat when units controlled by different players become present there. But the rules procedurally require the current showdown to end before a combat could begin. Although there were positives to that structure, it ultimately led to problems in card design long term. Now a showdown will open as long as the battlefield is contested, right? And there is a unit there whose controller doesn't control the battlefield. Okay. Wait, so a showdown only opens if it's contested. Even if it's not a combat, it's still a showdown. Okay. If there are units controlled by different players of the battlefield, it will open as a combat showdown. Otherwise, it will be a non-combat showdown. If a non-combat showdown is ongoing and a combat becomes staged at the same battlefield, the non-combat showdown will become a combat showdown in the next cleanup, and the normal procedures for opening a combat will begin. Showdowns are staged at battlefields that are contested. Combats are staged at battlefields that are contested and have units controlled by different players. If the turn player would initiate a showdown at a battlefield where combat is staged, it opens as a combat showdown. If the turn is in a showdown open state and combat is staged at a battlefield with an ongoing showdown, cleanup will cause the showdown to become combat showdown. So there's an additional cleanup phase for the non-combat showdown before it becomes a combat showdown. Sounds right to me. So how many more of these? There are a lot of these. Holy. There's a lot of reading. I don't think I was prepared for this. Rules update, the resolution step of combat. To support the winning combat rules introduced in Spiritforge, we're updating the resolution step procedures for combat using the new HOT FEPR system. Hot Pepper. The first thing you'll notice has changed is the combat cleanup. Units are healed and attacking units are recalled. After the combat cleanup, we'll determine the winner and loser of the combat. If the units were recalled in the combat cleanup, if there are still units remaining controlled by different players, or if there are no units at the battlefield, then the combat will have no result. Otherwise, the player who has units remaining in the battlefield wins. Then, if applicable, a player will conquer the battlefield. Finally, players and units lose the attacker defender designation, and any this combat effects expire. Wait, is this? I'm a little confused. Units are healed and attacking units are recalled, if there are any remaining. After the combat cleanup will determine the winner and loser. If units were recalled in the combat cleanup, if there are still units remaining controlled by different players, or if there are no units at the battlefield, then the combat will have no result. Otherwise, the player who has units remaining at the battlefield wins. So, okay. So rebuke and fight or flight would continually will continue to count as a combat win, but no spoilers on the bans. Rules update. May triggered abilities and extra conditions. Triggered abilities that say may are now optional to place on the chain, and triggered abilities that say do X to do Y. Cost within instructions will have the cost, do X, be incurred when placing the triggered ability on the chain. We know this is a big change, but it's for a good reason. This is no longer a larger development to templating and card layout that will be happening in future set, and by all accounts, it's a massive upgrade to card readability. For now, this is being introduced to align the rules with player intuition and set the stage for these upcoming changes. If a triggered ability says you may, as a first part of its effect, the controller of the source will choose whether or not to place the triggered ability on the chain when its trigger condition is fulfilled. And if a triggered ability contains a cost within instructions, the cost is treated as the base cost of the triggered ability. The cost must be paid in order to finalize the ability to the chain. Contains a cost within instructions. That cost is treated as the base cost. The cost must be paid in order to finalize the ability of the chain. Wait, does that mean that so this just means, actually no, so the reason I'm confused right now, Death Grip would still require the errata, correct? Death Grip would have still required an errata with this updated rules change, because it said kill a unit, draw 1, but it doesn't say kill a unit if you do draw 1. So for that reason, this doesn't mean that like Hidden Blade kills a unit, but if that unit doesn't die, they don't draw. I don't think so. I imagine it's still just like do as much as you can. If you don't pay correctly, it doesn't go on the chain. Yes, that's what it sounds like to me. But what I'm trying to understand is how does that work with replacement effects? Oh, replace is a game action that has already appeared once in the core rules document, sans rules for how it works. Try to find it if you can. Units printed in Unleashed gave us the opportunity to give rules on how objects are replaced and where the replaced objects go. In short, they go to the same zone that banished cards go. Whatever token replaces that object will inherit all effects and statuses that the object had. Some effects may allow the replaced object to be swapped back in, so don't worry about it being lost. Okay, I don't know. I'm still a little confused on this. I am assuming that this is not saying things like sacrifice, you're required to kill the unit in order for you to draw. I think that would still require an errata if it were to work that way. So that's a good question to ask, and we'll have to see how they handle that. When a token is created, okay, it's just saying that something is created, and when it's created, it's generated in a banished zone and then is put into the game. Predict and word backers. A common theme in this rules update is codifying instructions and abilities that have existed since Origins. In this case, we're codifying instructions that say, look at the top card of your main deck, you may recycle it into the game. Predict. Oh, I noticed that. They got rid of vision, right? They just replaced vision with predict. Predicting is the act of looking at some number of cards from the top of your deck and choosing to recycle any number of them and replacing the remaining ones back in any order. As part of predict being codified in the game action, we've added word backers to several game actions that frequently appear in card text, similar to the ones we've used for keywords. Card backers, I think, is the icon. Hey, Lelouch. With backers for stun and buff joining predict. New rule, predict action added, action word backers added. Copy effects. In Unleashed, we get to see our first true copy effect through the Spectre, though the Spectre of Spellsonger has long been hanging over Spiritforged. In order to support these copy effects, rules have been implemented, clarifying what traits a copy effect is allowed to copy and how those traits are applied. Copy effects will copy the copyable traits of a game object. Those traits are all of the printed or copied traits of the game object, including rules text. Nothing appended or granted will be seen by the copy text. Oh my gosh, there's so many words. Copy effects that copy only a specific set of traits from a game object will specify those traits, and the only specified traits will be copied. And the rule is when a game object or some of its traits become a copy of another object, all the copied traits become the game object's new copyable trait. If you copy a copy, the copy becomes a copy of the originally copied copy object. Copy. Yeah, I do Riftbound a little bit. I've been playing during set 16 because I took set 16 off because I wasn't casting because of the birth of my son. So because I wasn't casting, I needed something to do with my time, and I've been playing a lot of Riftbound. I've loved it. It's been so fun. I will be back on TFT primarily moving forward, though. Spicy Hop Pepper. In one of the most exciting changes for the rules experts in the audience, the FEPR process is being updated and expanded to manage more procedures of the game. The Hot FEPR acronym stands for Handle Outstanding Tasks, then Finalize, Execute, Pass, Resolve. Tasks are the various procedures that the game requires players to perform during their turn. Things like cleanup, start of turn procedures, the procedures of combat, the end of turn procedures. It was previously unclear when precisely the procedures of the turn paused items on the chain undergoing the FEPR process. But with tasks, we can now say very clearly, when tasks are outstanding, pause the FEPR process until those outstanding tasks have been handled, then perform FEPR process on any pending chain items. Note in the change to cleanups below, pending items on the chain are no longer finalized during cleanup. You know what I wish they would do? Thank you, appreciate that. What I wish they would do is when they give these very long-winded explanations, just give an example. For example, if blah, 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 it would be so much easier to understand these. Cleaned up cleanups. Finalization was removed from the cleanup and made part of the hot FEPR process. It being part of the cleanup was a vestigial rule from before the FEPR process was introduced, which led to some serious strangeness. Why? Why was finalization confusing though? Again, like I just wish they gave some examples. Additionally, to support player understanding of what it means for a unit to be in combat, combat designations are removed or added earlier in the cleanup. Combat is removed or added before units die to mark damage in a normal cleanup. A unit is in combat if it occupies a battlefield where combat is ongoing and has had appropriate combat designation. Finalization is no longer managed by cleanup and instead happens after outstanding tasks occur if there are no pending items on the chain. Okay, it's just clarifying it. This seems pretty straightforward, I guess, though. Loopy expiration step. This is secretly two changes in one. First, that we're renaming the end of turn phase to the ending phase. The second, now that we have the machinery of Hot FEPR, is to make the expiration step properly loop. In Spirit Forge, we saw the first instance of a triggered ability triggering in the expiration step, and it produced some very unintuitive results. Things like this turn effects applied in reaction to an expiration step trigger lasting until the next turn. Oh, that's interesting. And damage applied in the expiration step carrying over to the next turn. What card did this? Does anyone know? Yeah, agreed, Lelouch. Does anyone know what it's referencing to? Damage being dealt on the expiration of a turn because it says this turn, but it's happening when the turn ends? The end of turn phase is now the ending phase. End of turn cleanup has been folded into expiration. So basically anything that happens at the end of the turn stays within the end of the turn. Replacement effects. There have been a number of points of confusion with replacement effects. What happens if multiple events occur simultaneously that a replacement effect would apply to? What happens if the event being replaced is modified by another game action or game effect? Who controls a replacement effect? How the heck do Soraka and an equipped Guardian Angel work? Nice. In order to answer these questions and more, the replacement effects section has been beefed up with additional rules and examples. Oh, has it? Where are some examples? I would love to see them. If multiple units die simultaneously while their controller has Azanya's Hourglass and Plague, players are already choosing the order applying replacement effects. We want to make sure We want to make the rules more explicit for how these situations are handled. In a few cases, we're clarifying how to apply replacement effects to pretty complicated interactions. See the examples in the core rules document itself. Oh, we have to go to a whole nother document for those. Okay, so let's just see what the clarifications are. Controller affects the order when multiple replacement effects happen. Each replacement effect can only be applied in one sequence, one uninterrupted series of applications. The controller of the replacement effect is the player who controls the source. If an event replaced by a replacement effect would be modified by a game effect or a game action, the replacement effect inherits those modifications. Yeah, okay, so if you like reduce the might of a unit that is then saved by Set's legend ability, maybe? Is that what it's saying? That it's inheriting the stats? Imperial Decree. But when is Imperial Decree proccing on an end step? I don't know. Unless you are... Yeah, I don't know, actually. As mentioned in the Spirit Forged FAQ, there were issues with how control of battlefields is handled in cleanup, specifically in control being locked with contested status in cards like Hostile Takeover and Stormbringer, causing the game to reach an ambiguous state. In order to fix those bugs, the solution that made the most sense was to have control locked by the presence of a combat or showdown at the battlefield instead. Although the timings are quite similar, this allows Hostile Takeover, Stormbringer, and similar effects to exit the strange interstitial state between showdown and combat that they were stuck in. Alright, let's just read the clarification. If a player has no units at a battlefield and the turn is in an open state, they lose control of that battlefield in the following cleanup, unless there is a combat or showdown ongoing there. Okay, responsibility. Oh, I see. So anything where, like, if the end state of Hostile Takeover, if the enemy had control of your unit during the end state, it's just clarifying that they're no longer in control of the battlefield. Assuming it was the only card there, I guess. Certain card effects will care about who performs a game action. In order to help square these effects, the concept of responsibility has been added to the rules. A player is responsible for a game action if they are the player who performed the game action, or if they have been assigned responsibility, like Call the Week. Even if they did not control the effect that instructed them to perform a game action, they and only they will maintain responsibility for it. This is important for cards printed in Unleashed and also for shoring up rules for Immortal Phoenix. In order to fulfill a condition that says when you kill a unit with a spell, a player must be responsible for the kill action, control the spell that instructed it, and the spell itself must have attribution for the kill action. Okay. So if your opponent plays Call the Week and you kill something and have Immortal Phoenix in your trash, you can still play it. Because you're responsible for the kill action. You don't control the spell that instructed it. What does control mean? How does that actually work? Because you don't control the spell. So actually you wouldn't be able to play Immortal Phoenix off of Toll the Week. You're responsible for the action, but you don't control the spell. Okay. I don't know if anyone else is reading this the same way as me, but that's what it sounds like to me. Phoenix cannot be played in response to you killing a unit from your opponent's Call the Week. Linking is a new concept that we're using to clarify two sets of rules objects, linked instructions and that maybe they have created twice the ambiguity. Instructions or abilities are linked when they reference or are referenced by another instruction or ability. Linked instructions are especially important for spells that have been granted the repeat keyword. In the case of repeated Hidden Blade, linked abilities, on a similar note, are useful for clarifying how abilities function when they reference other abilities and what game objects they are allowed to affect. Instructions that reference game objects affected by or game actions performed in other instructions are linked instructions. In order for a later linked instruction to execute, its earlier linked instruction must have executed. If the earlier linked instruction was ignored for any reason, the later oh, interesting. Okay, so if someone tries to repeat Hidden Blade at a battlefield that I'm at, right? I have 2 units. I have a Set and a Fiora, and Fiora is buffed, and I'm playing the Set Legend. And someone tries to repeat Hidden Blade using some combination of cards and kill Fiora first and then kill Set. I can respond with Death Grip to kill Fiora in response to the first instance of Hidden Blade. And when she dies, I can actually save her too as a replacement effect. Their Hidden Blade first action can no longer target her, which means that it can't target the Set because the first instance was never fulfilled. Reference. Ignore the fancy word. What's important here is that we are codifying a rules concept that players are already aware of. If a spell, triggered ability, or activated ability says here, my, or its, or similar referential word, that information is checked when the ability or spell or ability resolves. Some new effects will also reference the trigger effect in their text. Those abilities will check the information when they trigger and are placed on the chain, not on resolution. Okay. We're so close. We're nearly there. Additional turn effects. Time Warp has been the subject of debate since it was printed. We're here to settle the matter. When an additional turn is created, it is owned by the player instructed to take it and insert it directly after the current turn into the repeating queue of turns generated at the start of the game. Turn order remains unaffected by additional turns. After an additional turn is finished, it is removed from the queue. Okay. Several cards were printed in Origins and Spirit Forge that instructed a player to prevent damage, but the precise mechanism for how damage is prevented did not exist. Well, it exists now. Okay, prevent is added. Cool. Yeah, thank you, Raptor. The discount rules in the Section 4 process of play were fairly vague about how discounts that only affect a component of the cost work. They're applied with other discounts, but by that point, the total cost has been summed. How can we identify which component is which in order to apply the appropriate discounts? Now, discounts that only affect a component of a cost will be applied when the component is added before any other discounts are applied. This will make interactions like Vex and Ezreal, where multiple discounts of different types apply to the same cards, more intuitive. Applied as soon as a component is added to the total cost when finalizing a card or ability. Okay. What was the confusion on this? Does anyone know? I'm not sure. It's just saying that you're allowed to discount twice, right? That's all it's saying. Was the confusion before that Vex and Ezreal could not be combined to discount? Yeah, making things cost 0. But what it's saying is that you can. Right? Because wouldn't it still work the same way? Vex says minimum to 1. Oh. So is this saying that Bellows could no longer be repeated for free? Or played for free, I guess. Yeah, okay. So this is basically this is saying you can't just abuse the Vex Ezreal to make things cost 0. You can't bypass Vex's minimum of 1. Main phase renamed. The action phase has been a bit of a sore thumb, especially with the prevalence of terms with action in them, game actions. Especially true with the action keyword. In order to make these concepts more distinct, we've moved to rename the action phase to something more aligned with how players experience it. The main phase is part of your turn where you play most of your cards and spend most of your time. Cool. Unique is now a keyword. Backline is the keyword that Caitlyn patrolling and Soraka wandering feature. that require them to be assigned combat damage last. Yes, I did see they just added a new keyword that has that effect. That's just called backline. So anything that says backline is given combat damage last. You would repeat Bellows 2-2 and apply Vex first to go 1-1, and then use Ezreal discount to reduce energy to 0 and 1 power, letting you float in energy. Now you always have to pay a minimum of 1 energy for Bellows. Understood. Because it's total cost brought down, and then because the components, because they're being applied when it's added. You can't bypass the 1 energy. I see. Okay, understood. Okay, well that's it. That is the core rules changes for Unleashed. Oh man, I actually only have 20 minutes before I have to go. So you know what? Let me see, how long is this? Is there anything super interesting here? Oh, this is just tournament rules? We'll see if we can get there. Let's do the bans first, because this is what everyone wants to see. Riftbound's first bans. Thank God it happened. Effective March 31st. That is tomorrow as of recording this. 4 cards in 3 battlefields will be banned and constructed. The following cards will be banned: Called Shot, Draven Vanquisher, Fight or Flight, Scrap Heap, Dreaming Tree, Obelisk of Power, and Reaver's Row. 7 cards banned. All of which, I will say, every single one of these cards is completely focused within either Draven specifically or in these purple decks, right? All three of these battlefields are battlefields that are commonly used in purple. I mean, Irelia is being hit a little bit with Dreaming Tree. Obelisk and Reaver's Row, of course, have just been unbelievable battlefields. But the one that stood out to me the most, Draven Vanquisher and Scrap Heap, I was not expecting those to be banned. I was hoping Scrap Heap. I didn't think that Vanquisher was even on the table, to be honest. I really, really did not think they would be willing to do this. Thank God Fight or Flight is gone. This card was so insane. The fact that it's a hidden card, you pay nothing or no recycle for it. That said, I think Purple is getting a lot of stuff in Unleashed that kind of make up for all of their bans. I cannot even imagine how unbelievable the game would be if these bans were not coming through. But let's read through it. This is just a video. How long is this video?
Hey Riftbounders.
Perfect.
I'm John Mormon.
You guys can hear this, right?
Design lead. I'm here to talk to you about Riftbound's first ever card bans. We know this is a big deal for players, and we don't take it lightly, both because of the effect it has on your play experience and because this is the first time we're doing bans. Effective tomorrow, March 31st, the cards being banned are Called Shot, Draven Vanquisher, Fight or Flight, and Scrap Heap. We are also banning 3 battlefields. Those are Dreaming Tree, Obelisk of Power, and Reaver's Row.
Obelisk.
For those new to TCGs, this means players may not use any of these cards in constructed events.
Interesting that it's not a limit, too.
If you are drafting or playing Sealed Riftbound. Banning 4 cards in 3 battlefields is a lot of shakeup, but our team feels strongly that these changes are merited. We will be watching how today's bans impact the game, and while we will of course follow community conversations about it, the social chatter is not a deciding factor in our decision making. Dave, our game director, has shared the team's philosophy around bans before, but it is worth revisiting them now that bans have actually arrived. Riftbound is still young. We are still figuring out when and why to ban cards. Origins and Spiritforge were both designed before the game fully launched, and we've learned a lot from seeing the game in your hands. As we watch how the competitive scene develops, we're gaining valuable knowledge that we didn't have when these cards were designed. Our philosophy remains that bans are not a decision we make lightly. Currently, here are the main factors that we consider when we think about
This is
bans.
what we want to see.
Number 1, is the card seeing too much play in a way that's unhealthy for the overall game? We don't ever want Riftbound to feel stale or predictable, so a single champion, domain, or play pattern should never.
What do you mean predictable? I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Purple's not predictable. You got 2 mana up and they got 15 different cards that can insta-win them the game. I say let's lift the ban on Fight or Flight.
Dominate the metagame for a
Give it back.
time. Number 2, will the problems the card causes worsen over time? Cards that are inexpensive with strong synergies will only get stronger as we release more cards. We don't want these patterns to snowball, so we'd rather intervene as soon as the problem arrives to avoid future regrets. Number 3. Does this card incentivize patterns of play that make the game less fun or cause other undesirable consequences? Cards being too strong isn't the only problem. The experience players have playing is just as important. Lots of players love that Riftbound is a complex game, but we don't want it to be overly long or frustrating to play, whether at your LGS or at bigger events. Now that we've covered the philosophy, let's talk about why these cards and battlefields were banned. First, called Shot and Scrap Heap. Both of these cards allow the player to filter through their deck and get ahead on cards without paying energy. That's way too efficient. Although today's bans will be a nerf to Chaos decks as a whole, these cards are being banned specifically to weaken Miracle decks. These decks have been very successful, but they take a large amount of game actions and time to execute. In tournament play, they contribute to round delays and can lead to one player sitting on their hands while their opponent's actions take up the entire clock. We don't feel like this style of deck is healthy for the game, and we don't want players who use Chaos Legends to feel like they have to lean into this style either, especially as this will only...
Something I want to just say as a quick response to all this, I actually feel like the biggest detriment that these cards have had to the game is not at any of the regional level. Like the best of cards being a thing at regional qualifiers actually does help artificially balance the game quite a bit. But I can say with certainty that there are a lot of players who just don't want to play locally right now because for the reasons he's outlining. The games take super long. The play patterns are frustrating. If you're not playing Draven, you're at such a significant disadvantage. It's basically like you play Draven, you play Aurelia. Maybe you can get away playing something like Victor or Kai'Sa. But outside of that, you cannot play anything that does not do well into purple. And even then, you basically have to win the first game. If you don't win game 1 against someone who's playing Miracle, they can just run the clock the entire time.
Only get worse as the card pool expands and cards that support this strategy get added. Now, let's talk about Draven Vanquisher. Draven midrange has proven itself both strong and more consistent than we consider healthy for the overall game.
I really like this
Draven decks
change,
have a lot going for them.
This is a good
They have
ban.
a powerful legend, a strong champion, a highly efficient card pool, and some very synergistic battlefields. When a legend is this strong,
agreed.
It's a problem. If we ban a
I
legend,
wanna go
it means
play
we're
locally
banning
again.
everyone from playing that legend altogether. Instead, we want to find ways to downshift the power level of the decks while keeping the legend able to be played. The truth is that we underestimated Glorious Executioner, Draven's legend. This legend got out the door at a power level above other legends, having been designed before Origins had been released because we were moving fast to launch the game. Considering our various options for what to do led us to look at banning Draven Vanquisher. Playing Draven Vanquisher out of the champ zone gives these decks a strong turn 2 play every game, threatening to overpower most units your opponent could conquer with at that time. Mid-range Draven will still have his Audacious and Showboat champions as options from the champ zone, but weakening their early game should give new strategies a chance to fight back. While Draven has been overperforming, he's not the only Chaos champion leading the tournament pack, so we decided to make an additional ban that would impact the power of Chaos in general.
Do they kill the entire legend with this? They significantly nerf him. But I mean, even a significant nerf, like even if his power level is dropped 20%, doesn't he just become a C tier deck? Like I'm pretty sure Draven is going to be fine. The power level of the legend itself is so absurd, right? Like that's, especially the mid-range version. I imagine Miracle is just dead now, obviously, because it's called Shotgun, but mid-range itself, you still have Forerunner, which by itself is kind of a broken card. Spinning Axe existing means that you can still hold up 2 mana, and yeah, you can't play Fight or Flight, but you're still representing Rebuke, you're still representing Spinning Axe. There's like a lot of gambling required. I don't think mid-range Draven is dead, personally.
Fight or Flight. Fight or Flight can sort of do it all for Chaos. End a combat, swing a conflict in your favor, protect an ally unit at a battlefield, and even sneak in an extra move trigger. It does all this at a cheap cost, making it a versatile tool that is also often the best at what it does. With this ban, we expect the overall power level
Deadly
of
Ghost.
to drop, and also to see more diversity
Thank you
in
for
the
the
tricks
sub. I
Chaos
appreciate that,
decks
man.
bring to the table. Now let's talk about battlefields. They're an important part of Riftbound, but at the same time, they present some interesting design challenges. Because battlefields start and play, usually can't be modified or destroyed, and can be played by any champion or domain, they have a greater risk of overrepresentation and repetition than most cards. It's a fine line between this battlefield supports my strategy or tactic and this battlefield is defining the game. We feel the battlefields we're banning have crossed that line. With that in mind, here is a breakdown of the 3 battlefields we've chosen to ban and why we're banning them. First up, Reaver's Row. Reaver's Row lets the defender flee the fight, short-circuiting combat, which is Riftbound's primary point of interaction. Rather than having meaningful showdowns, players are incentivized to retreat. It's also disproportionately strong in Draven decks, where their opponents can't retreat without giving them a card, and in domains where conquering is stronger than holding.
I had a good time talking to you.
The second battlefield is Dreaming Tree. It lets a player draw a card when they choose a friendly unit there with a spell each turn. This provides substantial card draw because it is highly synergistic and can be used on either player's turn. Access to a certain volume of cards is an intentional strength or weakness of various domains, and Dreaming Tree upends this balance too consistently. Lastly, we're banning Obelisk of Power. This battlefield lets both players channel an extra rune at the beginning of the game and has become extremely common among the most powerful decks. When a player builds a deck, they need to account for the games in which they'll go first and the games in which they'll go second, so they need a variety of different energy cost cards in their decks. With Obelisk of Power, players can consistently expect to bypass this restriction, ensuring that they can play certain cards reliably, which reduce.
I don't know why I never really thought of it in that light, that generally speaking, you have to build a deck that can function 2 different ways, but you actually just don't have to when you're playing around Obelisk. I mean, obviously, to me, it was more like if you're playing Draven or any sort of like chosen champion where it's 4 cost, then all of a sudden you just play when you go second, you're immediately dropping the best card in the game, going second. Obviously, that's not the only instance, but the fact that it affects deck building is something I kind of I didn't think about as much. I like that.
All 3 of these battlefields are examples of our team learning the mechanics and power levels necessary for competitive play. They also represent important lessons that will impact our designs of battlefields going forward. Our expectation with today's bans is to shake up the metagame such that Miracle decks become less prevalent and that Draven and other Chaos strategies take a small step back to compete with other decks on more equal footing. We'll be reading your feedback, watching how tournaments go, and following how the metagame shifts in response to these changes. When the need for banning arises in the future, we'll continue to be proactive and transparent with you all. Thanks for watching, and see you on the Rift.
Wow, I am so impressed. Honestly, this is way more heavy-handed than I thought Riot was going to take with their ban list. I've seen some people responding like, "Oh, I'm not convinced that this is immediately going to be a healthier meta." Obviously, I think things like Irelia are going to become more powerful as Draven is not there. But there are still things that are being taken care of. I mean, I think Dreaming Tree is a hit. Obviously, the fact that Stellacorin exists still is pretty rough. I think that if you're playing Irelia and you see this ban list, you're probably feeling pretty good. But overall, I think that there have been enough things touched slightly that it'll bring the power discrepancy between purple and the rest of the colors down quite a bit. Are there any of these changes? No, this is new or no? This is basically everything that they already said. Oh, these are interesting. Let's read these. What about changing the rules via errata? Rather than ban cards, why don't we just change them? Or change the underlying rules to remove power or store fun. We do errata cards to change the rules over time. Riftbound's a game where new rules are added every set. But the primary purpose of cards like this is long-term health of the game. Either the rules can't support the content properly, and changes must be made to provide that support, or to clarify what's intended to happen with the card or rule. We do not change cards or rules ever as a balance lever to adjust the competitive metagame. Okay. And this is, if anyone's not familiar, this is really just referencing, why don't we just make combat require combat damage to be resolved, right? That was one of the ways that it was suggested to balance the Draven Legend. They're basically saying, hey, we're not willing to do that. So instead, we'll find other ways to nerf it. Restricting. When a card is a problem, limiting or restricting it can actually make the problem sharper. Yeah, makes sense. It can just come down to whether to magnified randomness on who draws their lone copy. We do not have any plans to pursue these in the foreseeable future. Who knows what the long term holds, but it's not something players should expect to see from us anytime soon. It's also important for us to for clarity that whatever intervention we make in the competitive metagame is straightforward to describe. You can't play that anymore. Yeah, I like that. I mean, to me, it's like if you are new to the game and you bring a deck and then you go to your LGS and someone's like, oh no, you're only allowed to have one copy of that. It's like super non-intuitive. You have to look it up. You don't even know if they're telling the truth, right? It just requires more steps to be able to play the game. You could play that, but they totally change how it works, even though that text is not on the card. Yeah, exactly. Miracle. Recently, several archetypes have emerged that utilize the same core of Chaos cards to draw through most of their deck and play a series of under-costed units in the same turn. Players have been calling these decks Miracle decks. These strategies have proven highly successful, and they take a large amount of game actions that take a very long time to execute, with the Miracle player navigating a large number of choices. In tournament play, these decks have also contributed to significant round delays. Yep, okay. And this is basically everything that they already said in the video, so I don't think we necessarily need to reread all of this. I think we definitely get the gist. I've got about 5 minutes before I gotta go, so let's read through the tournament rules very quickly. Look at major rules and why we're changing them. Consistency across regions is very important to us, especially as we grow with more and more global events that bring players together from multiple regions. One area we've seen differences in interpretation is for handling game rewinds and changing game decisions. This update provides guidelines that clarify when players can change a decision, when judges should issue a rewind, how rewinds are handled. When a rewind occurs, is now returned to the point before the action occurred fully. This creates clear expectations. Okay. So they're not actually saying exactly how this works. They're just telling us that this changes. Refining penalty. Okay. Face down card errors, drawing extra cards for getting to ready during a weekend, deck list presentation errors. I wish they just had like a TLDR of what these are, so I don't have to. I mean, we could technically. Let's see. Is the change log? They're not even referencing exactly what it is, right? Change log at the end, maybe. No. It might be this stuff here. Yeah, it's okay. Asking judges rules questions. Judges are a critical part of any event, and they are there to help ensure events run smoothly and that rules are upheld correctly. Important for everyone to know what they're doing. Judges can explain rules and interactions, help clarify how rules work. Judges cannot predict outcomes of specific actions in the current game. Okay, so I'm assuming they're that predict outcomes. So is that saying like, oh, based on this game state, if you did this and then he played this, then it would do this? You have to use other methods of clarification. Answer a question in a way that gives advice. Point out triggers, bonuses, or board elements, like a trigger that will occur or a passive might bonus a player might not be considering. Okay. Players should frame questions around the specific rules and interactions in the abstract rather than asking what will happen if they take a specific action. If I attack and conquer this battlefield with my Tryndamere Barbarian, will I score the winning point? This is interesting because it's worded as a scenario. The judge can't answer it. The correct way to ask the question is, can point scoring abilities like Tryndamere score you the winning point? So couldn't you just ask questions without the language of if I? It would just be like, if a Tryndamere Barbarian attacked a battlefield that had a pit rookie on it and dealt additional damage, thus triggering the additional points scored, would that allow them to win the game? You're just asking in the abstract, not about your... Oh, is that what I have on the field? I didn't even notice. Whoops. That's what I would do. Hey, how do I get rid of this thing? I don't need top streamers. I don't need it. I don't know how to delete this, though. Where's my mods? Recycling clarification. We've noticed players have been... Oh, you know what? I think I can do it here. Here we go. Hold on. Nope, that's pin. Bag. I timed it out. I don't know if I did that right. Delete. No, I keep timing them out. Ban. I don't know how to do this. Or whatever, they're banned. I don't know. Players have been leaving their recycled runes face down on the board to track floating energy. While we love the ingenuity and convenience, it's resulted in issues as players improperly paying cost, runes being recycled in the incorrect order, moving card when a card is recycled. It must be put on the bottom of the appropriate deck. No, I don't like that. Oh, I see. Here's the change log. It tells you where they all are. So if you guys are interested in actually reading the exact language of how these things are affected, you can read the change log, the change list itself. But that should do it. We got through all of it, pretty much, that we wanted to see. Big thing, of course, is the ban list. I'm really happy with these changes. I would have loved to see Stellacorn gone. That's the only thing I would have added to the list. Maybe doing something about Aurora, because I think Aurora is going to be a bit of a menace next set. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this ban list. I'm excited to see what it brings to the future of Riftbound. So hope you guys all enjoyed. I'm going to get going now. But good luck out there, and enjoy not having to play against Draven. So I'll see you all later.